Hey 6th graders, Mrs. Simonson here for your last lesson in Unit 7, and tonight we'll be working with dividing fractions, reducing those fractions to lowest term, and applying our knowledge of division into word problems that involve fractions. So dividing fractions is actually quite simple because what you do is you actually turn it into a multiplication problem, and you know what to do with multiplying fractions from our last lesson. But it takes one additional step and one very important step that you have to do before you are dividing. And so if you look at our general pattern, we have fraction a over c, and we're dividing that by fraction b over d. Well, to change it to a multiplication problem, notice that we keep the same first fraction, a over c, but because we're going to do the opposite, instead of dividing, we're going to multiply, we need to use the opposite second fraction. And what you do is you flip it. B now becomes the denominator and D now becomes the numerator. And then you can just carry out your steps for multiplying as you would normally do. So 1/2 divided by 1/6 is equal to 1/2 times, and now we need to flip the second fraction, and that's called its reciprocal. A reciprocal is, every fraction has a reciprocal, and the reciprocal is a fraction when you multiply them together, you'll get 1. So 1/2 times 6 over 1. Now we can use that cross reduction method we learned, and I see that 2 and 6 share a common factor of 2, and I then can say 1 over 1 times 3 over 1 equals 3. So 1/2 divided by 1/6 is 3. Looking at the second problem, remember a whole number can be written as a fraction over 1. So when I want to change this to a division, from a division to a multiplication, I have 2/3 times, instead of 5 over 1, I'm going to use 1 over 5. And I don't see any partners for cross-reducing that share a common factor except for 1. So it's going to be 2/15. 2/3 divided by 5 is equal to 2/15. Now go ahead and try problems 1, 2, and 3 in your notebook. Divide them by changing them into multiplication problems where you use the flip of the second fraction. Reduce when needed. Press play when you're ready to check your work. Notice you might have had slightly different ways to get to the problems if you didn't use the cross reduction, but you should still arrive at the same answers that I did. All right, when you want to divide mixed numbers, the system is very similar. First, you want to change them to improper fractions, then multiply by the reciprocal, and then change back to a mixed number. So I have 2 and 1/2 divided by 3 and 3/4. So 2 and 1/2 is rewritten as 5 halves, and 3 and 3/4 is written as 15/4. So I really have 5 halves divided by 15/4. Now I'm going to change that to a multiplication problem. 5 halves times 4/15. And then I always get into the habit of using that cross reduction. So 2 and 4 share a factor of 2, and 5 and 15 share a factor of 5. So I divide them by their common factors. So I have 1 over 1 times 2 over 3. Well, that just equals 2/3. So 2 and 1/2 divided by 3 and 3/4 is 2/3. And I don't have to change it back to a mixed number because that's a proper fraction. So 6/2/8 divided by 3 and 5/9. First thing I do is change them both into improper fractions. So I have 50/8 divided by 32/9. Now I set it up as a multiplication problem, so 50/8 times, remember to flip the second one, 9/32. So now 50 and 32 both share a factor of 2, so I'm going to have 25 and 16. So I have 25/8 times 9/16. So 25/9, thinking of it as 9/4, so that would be 225. And 8 times 16 would be 128. Hopefully. You'll let me know if it's wrong for sure. So now I think 225, how many groups of 128 can I make? I think I can make one group, and then 225 minus 128 Now I know I do my subtracting. It looks a little different than yours, but you should arrive at the same answer. So 97 128ths. And I believe 97 is on our prime chart, so the only factor those two share is a factor of 1. Again, if I've made any calculation errors, I know you'll let me know. All right, I want you to solve problems 4, 5, and 6 in your notebook. Remember to change them to improper fractions first, then change it from a division problem to a multiplication problem by flipping the second fraction, and then use the cross reduction when possible. Press play when you're ready to check your work. All right, now we want to work on applying this knowledge of division. So if I have a ribbon that's 7.5 feet long, and I need to see how many 2 3/4 feet I can make, I'm really dividing that 7.5 foot long ribbon into 2 3/4 sections. So the first thing I do is make them into improper fractions. Then I change it to a multiplication problem. I do any cross reducing that can happen. So I have 30/11ths, and I change that into a mixed number, 2 8/11ths. Solve number 7 in your math notebook. Press play when you're ready to check your work. Now in both of these problems, you would want to get rid of when you're answering the question, how many sections of 2 3/4 foot long strips of ribbon. You can't make an 8/11th of a 2 3/4, so you'd say 2 full sections. Just like in number 7, it asks how many melon plants can you plant. You would say 3, and then the 6/13 kind of, when you answer the question, just gets put off to the side. So again, tonight we worked with dividing fractions in mixed numbers, reducing them to lowest terms, and solving problems that involve dividing fractions in mixed numbers. Review any part of this video before you take your quiz over on Schoology, and we'll talk to you very soon.